Hey guys, welcome back to my channel FoodishBeauty. It's TJ here. Today I have another quick review for you guys of the recently launched MAC Contour and Sculpt Yourself palette. This is a ready-made cheek contouring and blush palette from MAC. All of the shades are pre-selected and ready to be used by you. This palette came unassembled from the website, and all you need to do is put the two elements of the palette together and put the inserts in, and voila, you got yourself a beautiful contour and blush palette. This palette is an online exclusive only, and it retails at $60 on the US MAC website, and it will be making its way to the UK MAC website very soon. Now, this palette was launched right after the release of Urban Decay's Gwen Stefani blush palette. The highlight shade within that palette is way too dark for someone who has a very fair skin tone of NC 15 or even lighter. So for me personally, this palette is much more versatile. The 6 shades within this palette comes ready selected by MAC, so you get one highlighting shade, one sculpting shade, a bronzy shade, as well as 3 blushes. At least that's how I utilize this palette, but let me break down the shades individually for you guys so you can see how you can best utilize this palette for your own skin tones. To start with, we have this highlighting shade here called Emphasize, and it is described as a matte sculpting powder by MAC, but for me it does have a good amount of sheen. Not shimmer, just sheen within it. Upon swatch, it does look quite white, but when you actually blend in this shade onto your face, it just leaves you with the most glorifyingly lit within kind of highlight. This is what I'm using today as my highlight on the top of my cheeks as well as the bridge of my nose, and it just looks so natural, as if, you know, that is my natural glow, and I really love that effect. It is quickly becoming one of my favourite highlighters of all time, and that says something about this shade. I think it's great for highlighting for fair skin tones, but for medium to dark skin tones I can see it work really well as a brightening setting powder for the under eye area too. Next up we have Sculpt, which is this mid-tone matte sculpting powder right here, and it is a neutral fawn colour, so it is not going to be too warm to show up as orange, nor is it going to be too cool toned to show up to grey. I love this shade for contouring, and it is what I'm using today in the hollows of my cheeks, the sides of my nose, as well as a little bit on the side of my jawlines. I think it's a perfect contouring shade for fair to medium skin tones. Now, moving along to the middle part of this palette, and we start with this very aptly named peachy shade called Peaches, and this is a sheer tone blush described by MAC. I would definitely agree with that. This is very sheer and very matte. This is a dreamy pastel peach which would look great on all skin tones, and the texture of this is very smooth and finely milled. Of course, with it being sheer, you can decide whether to wear it lightly for a daytime look or build it up for a more dramatic finish. Next up we have another blush called Fleur Power, and this is a bright fuchsia pink in a satin finish. The satin texture of this blush doesn't actually translate too well once it's blended out onto your cheeks, so it's pretty much a matte finish. The texture of this blush is slightly more powdery than Peaches before, which was almost like velvet, so it does kick up a slight amount of powder once you put your brush in there, but it's nothing too significant to be worried about. This is a very bright and super pigmented pink blush which will look stunning on deeper skin tones, and for fairer skin tones I would suggest a light hand when you apply. Now moving on to the more bronzy and final row of this palette, starting with this lighter shade here called Trace Gold. This is described by MAC as a sheer tone shimmer blush, and in my opinion it is a mid-tone bronze with a satin finish. This shade has a jelly to powder texture which is soft, creamy and very easy to blend. The satin finish of this powder diminishes quite a lot once blended out onto the skin, so I've actually been loving this shade as my daily bronzer, and this is what I'm wearing as my bronzer today on the top of my cheekbones. It really gives me a warm glow without looking too orange or shimmery, so I highly recommend this shade as a bronzer for fair skin tones, but for medium to darker skin tones I recommend this as a blush topper or even highlighter. The very last blush shade I have here is called Sunbask, which is another sheer tone shimmer blush. This also has the same jelly to powder texture, which makes it super easy to apply and blend. This shade is basically the deeper, warmer and more peachier cousin of the shade Trace Gold, and it is very beautiful indeed. It is what I'm wearing today as my blush on the rounds of my cheeks, and I adore the combination of a golden glow combined with a peachy undertone. And with it being sheer, it would apply so easily and stunningly on all skin tones. So that was the breakdown of all the shades within this palette. As you can see, it is such a versatile palette and I adore all of the textures of these blushes. If I have to pick a fault with this palette, it has to be that it's not an entirely travel friendly size, and the see-through hard plastic top of this palette could be very much of a fingerprint magnet. Other than that, I give this palette a solid 9 out of 10, especially if you were purchasing this in the US where it's retailing at $60, which is such a steal, and I truly hope it makes its way to the UK very, very soon. So that concludes my review for this palette. I hope you really enjoyed it. If you have, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Please also find me on all social media platforms under the name FoodishBeauty, where I will be updating you on all beauty, fashion, travel and food trends. Thank you ever so much for watching. Take care, my friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Hey guys, welcome back to my channel FoodishBeauty. It's TJ here. Today I have a quick little review video for you guys of the latest high-end luxury highlighter launches of Spring Summer 2016.